Hello, this is Jacob Phillips, and this is my poetry presentation. Hope you like it. This first poem is entitled, How does one attempt to capture a moment spent alone with the universe? I cannot begin to imagine. I think perhaps words are the most powerful form of expression, but what happens when they fail? What happens when you're walking home alone at 3 a.m., and you want to thank the stars for not caring about your coffee breath as you whisper your favorite secrets to them? How do you explain the way in which you baptized yourself in the steam from a city street grate? I want to tell you how it's okay that I don't have a God because I believe in humanity, and I believe in a future amidst a world of seemingly ceaseless destruction. I am clean now, rejuvenated. I have bathed myself in the cold blackness of the night. The tinnitus in my ears from music that spoke to me too well has erased all hateful sounds. The stars in my eyes that started when I hit my head after falling for you have made the world new. And as my breath rises and catches in the streetlight, I wonder how I can tell you that I'm alive, and it's amazing. So, besides Shel Silverstein, the first time I read poetry, it was prose poetry written by Hopkins. She's a young adult author that tackles problems, abuse, love, drugs, self-image, suicide, self-harm, eating disorders, prostitution. The books, I think, were meant to raise awareness. But somewhere along the reading, I realized that there was beauty in her poetry. I found that there was this beauty in suffering and hardship, but also in recovery and perseverance. As for my current influences, at the tail end of middle school and then again in both my sophomore years of high school and college, I fell in love with John Keats. I really adore his sense of romanticism. I like the way he appreciates art and culture and nature, and of course romance. For very similar reasons, I've also begun to read Ted Hughes' poetry. And although I love both these poets, I guess my poetic epiphany occurred last semester. I studied Sarah Kay in my lit class. Her poetry and its tendency towards a more realistic, self-reflective prose style really resonated with me. Also, in the past couple of weeks, I've been reading Ben Lerner, who was recommended to me during my first semester here at UMass. He deals with a lot of stream of consciousness and movement of thought, which are interesting things to consider when writing poetry. I'm inspired just by daily life, I guess. I love thinking and writing about my interactions with others and the world around me. For me, I think that's all you can hope to do with writing. We each have our own unique experience every time we take a breath or have a new thought, and I think in writing it's important to reflect on the individuality of our experiences. So I guess poetry is my way of representing my appreciation of being alive and for having my own perspective and my own story to tell. Rhyme scheme is great if you can pull it off. I can't, though. Every time I try, it sounds like Dr. Seuss lost all of his inspiration, and then on top of that, tried to write as horribly as he possibly could. So while I think rhythm is important, and I do sometimes include the occasional rhyme in my poetry, I refuse to base my poetry off of a structured rhyme scheme. Most of my poetry is relatively freeform. Sometimes I'll restrict myself to a syllable count, but more often than not, I just write what comes to mind, and the subject will shape the poem. I usually start with an image, an idea, or a line or a phrase, and then I build from there. I do a good majority of my writing after midnight, it seems. That's when I feel the most creative. Usually I'll get an idea when I'm walking home from visiting my friends at 1 or 2 a.m., and I'll quickly jot it down on my phone. Then when I get back to my room, I'll type it out on my laptop or typewriter, and I'll flesh out the poem. I know, it sounds super pretentious and definitely a little cliche, but I use it all the time for my creative writing. It really forces me to slow down and think about what I'm writing and why it's important. And then when I'm done, it forces me to go back and reread for errors since it doesn't autocorrect. And then when I go back and reread is when a lot of the important changes are made to my piece. I remember the way you looked in the backseat of my car, and how you jumped at every bump in the road because you were always surprised at the imperfections of the world. And your big blue eyes, when the streetlights caught them just right, they shone with a quiet hope, a sincerity, a moment of possibility that made me feel whole. And I remember the way your breath fell on my neck, my face, my lips, when we were too young, too dumb to notice the importance of a whisper, or a kiss in the park in the rain. And your smile, oh God, your smile, could melt glaciers, move mountains, even if it couldn't fix our mistakes. and I wish you wouldn't give it away, would keep it for me instead. I'm heavily influenced by music. Music is another form of poetry. I'm always listening to music or playing it on my guitars or keyboard. It's a huge part of my life. Songwriting is tough. I used to write songs a lot more when I didn't think about how they would sound when they were finished. But now I'm usually too self-conscious to write my own music. I think all lyrics are poetry, but definitely not all poetry can become lyrics. I started writing poetry in middle school, probably as love letters to my girlfriends of the time in 5th grade. I got less awful in high school and somewhat decent around my senior year, but I haven't gotten good yet. I'll let you know when or if that happens.
Is this a video?
Yeah. I'm gonna get profile pictures out of this.
devotee.